Every night at midnight, my wealthy son sneaks into the dark yard to bury a small metal box. I watched him from my window, thinking he was hiding dirty money or a secret affair. Then I dug it up. Under the cold moonlight, I saw papers covered in my own name. He was not just burying a secret in that hole. He was burying my entire life. My name is Vivian Mercer. I am 68 years old, a widow with Irish blood running through veins that feel colder every passing winter. I live in what the real estate agents call a detached guest suite at the very edge of my son's property in the upscale suburb of Lakewood Ridge. It sounds elegant, but at 3 a.m, it feels less like a home and more like an observation post. Sleep has become a stranger to me lately. The older I get, the more the silence of the night feels heavy, like a physical weight pressing against my chest. To kill the empty hours, I sit by the kitchen window with a cup of tea that has long since gone cold. I stare out at the backyard. It is a perfect slice of the American dream. The grass is manicured to the millimeter. The white fence glows like bleached bone in the moonlight. And the silence is so profound it rings in my ears. It is beautiful, but it is lonely. I first saw the light 3 nights ago. A single, focused beam from a flashlight cut through the darkness of the yard. It was Eric, my son. He is a successful financial businessman, a man who usually wears Italian suits and carries himself with the confidence of someone who owns the world. I watched him pace the grass. I assumed he was taking a private call, perhaps dealing with a crisis in Asian markets that could not wait until sunrise. I told myself it was nothing. But tonight was different. The digital clock on my microwave read 12:15 when the back door of the main house opened again. Eric stepped out. He was not wearing his suit. He was dressed in a dark hoodie and sweatpants, blending into the shadows. In his right hand, he gripped a garden shovel. In his left, he clutched a small metal box. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. He did not look like my son, the executive. He looked like a thief. He moved with a frantic, jerky speed toward the far corner of the yard, past the children's swing set, to the spot where the old maple tree stands over a bed of withered hydrangeas. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass to see better. He started to dig. The ground is hard this time of year, but he attacked the earth with a desperate rhythm. He would dig, then stop, then whip his head around to look back at the house. He looked like a criminal trying to hide the evidence. I instinctively took a step back into the shadows of my kitchen, afraid he might see the reflection of my eyes. My mind raced to find a logical explanation. Maybe it is a pet. I thought. Maybe a hamster died, and he did not want to upset the children in the morning. But the box was too heavy. He held it with both hands as he lowered it into the hole. He did not just drop it. He placed it down with a terrifying gentleness. Then he paused. I saw his lips move. He was whispering something to the dirt. "What are you doing?" "Eric?" I whispered to the empty room, my hand trembling as I touched the window pane. "Why do you look so scared?" He shoveled the dirt back in and stomped it down flat with his boot. He scattered some dead leaves over the fresh soil to camouflage it. Then he turned and walked back to the main house. I heard the heavy thud of the back door closing, followed by the sharp chirp of the security system arming itself. The house was locked. The alarm was on. The family was safe. But the real danger had just been buried in the backyard. I stood there in the dark. Part of me, the mother, wanted to believe he was just burying stress, or perhaps old letters, or something harmless. But I spent 40 years as a bookkeeper. I spent my life looking for the one number that did not add up, the one receipt that was out of place. I know that people do not bury innocent things in the middle of the night. Innocent things go in the trash. Guilty things go in the ground. I looked at the patch of disturbed earth under the moonlight. My heart felt like it had turned to ice. "He is hiding something," I said aloud, the silence of the room amplifying my fear. He is hiding something. And why does my own name scream in my head when I look at that hole? The silence of Lakewood Ridge is expensive. It costs millions of dollars to buy this kind of quiet, where the only sound is the hum of a sub-zero refrigerator. But my ears are still tuned to the grinding gears of Milford, the industrial town where I left my youth and my beauty on the factory floor. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair. I could almost smell the bleach and stale coffee of my old life. After my husband died in that accident at the steel mill, leaving me with nothing but a folded flag and a 4-year-old boy, I stopped sleeping. I worked nights as a cashier at a 24-hour gas station and days cleaning the executive offices downtown. I scrubbed floors until my knees were bruised and my hands were raw. All so Eric would never have to touch a mop or a wrench. Eric was not like the other boys who played stickball in the street. He was quiet. He was obsessed with order. I remember coming home at 6 in the morning, bone-tired, to find him sitting at the kitchen table with his math homework spread out like a battle map. He would look up at me, his eyes wide and serious. "Let me count your tips." "Mom," he would say, "I want to see if we have enough for the electric bill." He would stack the quarters and dimes into neat little towers. One night, when he was 12, he pushed a stack of coins toward me and said, "One day, I am going to make so much money that you will never have to work nights again. I promise. I will buy you a castle." I believed him. I believed him so much that when the acceptance letter came from that prestigious university 2 states away, I did not hesitate. The scholarship covered tuition, but the living expenses were astronomical. I took the gold wedding band off my finger, the last piece of my husband I had left, and sold it. I emptied my savings account down to the last cent. I sent him away with a smile, hiding my terrified heart, because I knew he was destined for things I could not understand. And he did it. He joined Northbridge Equity right out of school. He rose through the ranks faster than anyone expected, becoming a partner before he was 30. Then came the Italian suits, the German cars, and the house in Lakewood Ridge that looked more like a museum than a home. Then came Sabrina. She was beautiful and sharp, a public relations director for the Aurora Media Group. She knew how to smile for cameras and how to host dinner parties. She was always polite to me, treating me like a fragile antique that needed to be dusted occasionally. It was Eric's idea for me to sell the old house in Milford. "Mom, it does not make sense for you to be alone there." He had argued over a Thanksgiving dinner 5 years ago, pouring me a glass of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget used to be. "Sell the place. Move into the guest house here. It is fully furnished. We can be a real family. And give me the money from the sale and your pension. I will invest it for you. You know I can triple what the bank gives you." "Are you sure?" "Eric, that is every penny I have in the world," I had asked, hesitating. "Trust me." "Mum," he had said, squeezing my hand with those warm, capable fingers, "I am doing this to take care of you. Let me protect you now." So I did. I signed the papers. I transferred $300,000, my life's blood, into a joint investment account he managed. For the first few years, It felt like paradise. I was the doting grandmother to Liam and Grace, picking them up from school, baking cookies, living the life I had dreamed of while scrubbing other people's toilets. There was no abuse. There were no harsh words. We were the picture of American success. But tonight, that picture has been slashed. I opened my eyes and looked back out at the dark yard. The memory of his warm hand squeezing mine at that Thanksgiving dinner turned cold in my stomach. I thought about the way he looked an hour ago, digging in the dirt. The boy who stacked quarters to help me pay the electric bill was gone. The man in the yard was not counting money to save me. He was burying a box. And as I stared at the fresh dirt, a chilling realization settled over me. He did not look like a son protecting his mother. He looked like a man protecting himself from his mother. "You promised to buy me a castle, Eric," I whispered to the glass, feeling a tear slide down my cheek. "But I think you just built me a prison." The oversized SUV pulled out of the driveway at 10 in the morning. I watched from behind the curtain as Eric and Sabrina buckled the children in. They were going to a pumpkin patch for a photo opportunity, the picture of a happy, wholesome American family. As soon as the electric gates clicked shut behind them, the silence of the property shifted. It was no longer peaceful. It was an invitation. I did not run, but I walked faster than my old legs should have allowed. I went to the shed and grabbed my gardening gloves, the leather stained with years of soil and hard work. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic rhythm that made me feel nauseous. I was breaking the law in my own backyard. I was trespassing on the land I had paid for. I knelt by the old maple tree. The ground was still disturbed from the night before, the leaves scattered too perfectly over the loose soil. I dug with a hand trowel, scraping away the top layer. The smell of damp earth and decaying roots filled my nose. It was a smell I usually loved, the smell of spring planting and life. Today, it smelled like a grave. Clink. The metal sound was sharp in the morning air. I froze, looking over my shoulder at the empty driveway. I brushed away the last of the dirt and pulled up a heavy object wrapped tightly in thick black nylon. My hands shook as I peeled back the plastic layers. I expected to find stacks of cash, perhaps illicit drugs, or maybe jewelry stolen from a mistress. It was a grey tin box. I popped the latch. Inside, there was a black USB drive and 2 silver keys that looked like they belonged to a safety deposit box. Underneath those lay a thick stack of papers, folded into quarters to fit the small space. I unfolded them on the grass, smoothing out the creases with a trembling hand. The header on the first page made my blood run cold. General power of attorney. I scanned down the page. My full name, Vivian Elaine Mercer, was printed in bold, and at the bottom, there was a signature. It was my name, written in a shaky, jagged script that looked like mine, but it was not mine. I flipped to the next page. Application for long-term residency, Amber Hills Care Facility. Amber Hills, I whispered, the wind snatching the words from my dry lips. That is 3 hours away. I read the attached medical notes. They were dated 2 weeks ago. Patient exhibits signs of advanced cognitive decline, confusion, paranoia, inability to manage personal finances, recommended for immediate custodial care. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I had never seen a doctor for memory loss. I still did the crossword puzzle in ink every Sunday. I managed the household grocery budget down to the penny. But here, On this crisp white paper, I was described as a senile invalid who needed to be locked away. I reached for my pocket to get my phone. I needed a picture. I needed proof. I grabbed the papers, intending to stuff a few into my cardigan, when a sound cut through the air. The low rumble of an engine. Panic, hot and sharp, flooded my veins. They were back. They must have forgotten something. If Eric saw me here, with his secrets spread out on the grass, the charade would be over. He would know that I knew. No. No. Not yet. I hissed to myself. I frantically folded the papers, shoving them back into the tin box. I threw the keys and the USB drive on top and slammed the lid shut. I wrapped the nylon around it, my fingers fumbling with the plastic, and dropped it back into the hole. I shoveled the dirt back in with my bare hands, not bothering with the trowel, desperate to cover the metal. I patted the earth down, scattered the leaves back over the spot, and stood up just as the front gate began to open. I ran to the guest house, my chest heaving, my knees weak. Inside the safety of my kitchen, I went straight to my filing cabinet. I pulled out an old tax return I had signed last year. I placed it on the counter. Then I closed my eyes and visualized the signature I had just seen on the buried papers. I opened my eyes and looked at my real signature. It was firm, looped, and precise. The one in the ground was weak and trembling. It was a forgery designed to look like the handwriting of a woman losing her mind. I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles turning white. My son was not just stealing my money. He was stealing my identity. He was rewriting my reality so he could erase me. "You practiced?" I said to the empty room, my voice breaking into a sob that I refused to let out. "You practiced my name, so you could sell me." The air in the house changed after I found the box. It became thick with performance. I started noticing the little seeds they were planting, tiny lies designed to grow into a forest of doubt. At dinner, Eric would look at me with exaggerated concern and ask if I had taken my medication, even though the only thing I take is a multivitamin and an occasional aspirin for my knees. Then came the whispers. I heard Sabrina on the phone with her friends during a brunch I was not invited to join. She lowered her voice, but not enough. She said that Eric's mother was having episodes and that I was becoming dangerously forgetful. I sat in my kitchen and gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. I remembered the date of my husband's death. I remembered the exact balance of my checking account. I remembered the middle name of my first-grade teacher. I was not forgetting anything. I was being written out of my own life. The breaking point came 3 nights later. The insomnia was back, fueled by a rage that burned in my chest like heartburn. It was 2 a.m. My guest house is only 20 feet from the main patio, and the summer air carries sound like water. I heard the sliding glass door of the master bedroom open. I crept to my window and cracked it open just an inch. The night was still, and their voices drifted down from the balcony above. "You are terrible at this, Sabrina," Eric hissed. His voice was low, but it vibrated with a frustration I had never heard before. "When Dr. Evans comes for the house call next week, you cannot just sit there. You have to look worried. You have to tell him she left the stove on again." "But she didn't leave the stove on." "Eric." Sabrina's voice sounded thin, trembling. "She made a perfect pot roast yesterday. She remembers the kids' schedules better than I do. This feels wrong. I don't want to lie to the doctor. Do you want to lose this house?" Eric snapped. The sound of a lighter flicking open followed. Then a sharp exhale of smoke. Northbridge Equity has started an internal audit. A forensic team is going through the partner accounts. I moved $600,000 through Mom's portfolio to cover the margin call on the tech shorts. If they ask her about it, and she answers them coherently, I go to federal prison. Do you understand? I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. The cold from the floor seeped through my slippers, but I was frozen. He was not just stealing my retirement. He was using my identity to launder his failures. So the only way out is if she didn't know, Sabrina asked, her voice barely a whisper. The only way out is if she couldn't know. Eric corrected her, his tone dropping to a chilling, clinical flatline. If we get the guardianship, if the court declares she lacks capacity, then her signature on those transfers is voidable. But more importantly, no one questions her. She becomes a non-entity, a tragedy of old age. The audit team moves on, but Amber Hills is 2 states away. Sabrina sobbed quietly. What about the kids? They love her. You are talking about sending her away like she is broken furniture. She is broken. Sabrina. Financially. She is a liability, Eric said. I could hear the shrug in his voice. The kids can visit? There are visiting hours on weekends? It is a nice facility. It has a garden. She likes gardens. He spoke about me as if I were already gone, as if the woman who raised him, who scrubbed floors to buy his textbooks, was nothing more than an inconvenient column in a spreadsheet that needed to be deleted. I pulled back from the window and slid down the wall until I hit the floor. The tears did not come. The shock had burned them away. I sat there in the dark, hugging my knees, feeling a strange new sensation rising in my chest. It was not fear anymore. It was clarity. They wanted a senile old woman. They wanted a helpless victim who could not recall where she put her keys, let alone where her money went. I crawled across the floor to the bottom drawer of my desk. I dug past the old greeting cards and found my old smartphone, the one with the cracked screen I had kept as a backup. I plugged it in. The battery icon flashed red, then green. I opened the voice recorder app. You want to play a game? I whispered to the glowing screen, my voice steady and cold. You want to prove I am losing my mind? Let's see how much the jury thinks I remember when I play this back in court. The waiting room at Dr. Evans' office smelled of antiseptic and old magazines. I sat with my handbag clutched tightly in my lap, the voice recorder app running silently beneath a layer of tissues. When the nurse called my name, I made a show of needing a moment to find my footing. It was time to give the performance of a lifetime. Inside the examination room, I sat on the crinkly paper and looked at the doctor with wide, slightly vacant eyes. Dr. Evans. Did I already mention the headaches? I asked, deliberately repeating a question I had asked 2 minutes prior. I feel like I just said that. Dr. Evans shifted in his stool, looking uncomfortable. He tapped his pen against his clipboard. Yes. Vivian. You did. We discussed that. Your son. Eric sent me an email last week. He mentioned you have been repeating yourself quite a bit lately. I felt a spike of anger, but I forced my face to crumble into confusion. Eric wrote to you? I asked, my voice trembling. But I haven't seen a doctor for my memory. Why would he say that, Dr. Evans sighed, avoiding my eyes. He sent a rather detailed log of your behaviors. He is worried. Vivian. He thinks it might be the start of something serious. But I haven't made a formal diagnosis yet. That was all I needed to hear. There was no diagnosis. Just a narrative being spun by a desperate man. I asked for a copy of my full medical file, lying that my lawyer needed it for an update to my will. When I got to the car and flipped through the pages, I saw them. Notes added in the margins, dated only a few days ago, using phrases like patient exhibits, sundowning, and loss of temporal awareness. They were the exact same words I had heard Sabrina use on the phone. They were scripting my senility. I drove straight to the downtown district, parking in front of a brick building that had not changed in 40 years. The sign read, Harlan and Rowe Law Office. I walked in and saw Naomi Rowe sitting behind a desk that was far too big for her small frame. We used to share a cubicle when we were 20. Now, she was one of the sharpest estate lawyers in the state. Vivian, she said, standing up, her glasses slipping down her nose. My God, it has been years. You look. I look like a woman who is about to be declared incompetent, I said, cutting her off. I placed the tin box on her desk. I need you to listen to something, and I need you to tell me if I am crazy. We spent the next hour going over the forged signatures, the Amber Hills application, and the recording of Eric and Sabrina on the balcony. Naomi's face went from welcoming to horrified. By the time the recording finished, she was pale. This is criminal. Vivian, Naomi whispered, taking off her glasses and rubbing her temples. If we go to the police now, we have enough to stop the guardianship. But if we want to catch him for everything, we need him to feel safe. We need him to think he is winning. So I have to play the fool I asked. You have to be the best actress in Lakewood Ridge, Naomi said, leaning forward. Let him think the plan is working. Make mistakes. Forget things. The more confident he gets, the more sloppy he will get. I went home and started my new role immediately. That evening, I walked into the main house while Eric and Sabrina were watching television. I stood in the middle of the living room, holding a spatula. Sabrina, dear, I said, making my hand shake just enough to be noticeable. I can't find the thing for the eggs. The metal thing. Eric muted the TV. He exchanged a look with Sabrina, a look of dark triumph. It is in your hand, Mom, Eric said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. You are holding it. Are you okay? Did you take your pills? Oh. I looked at the spatula, feigning shock. I don't know why I didn't see it. I feel so foggy today. I shuffled out of the room, keeping my head down. As soon as I turned the corner, I flattened myself against the wall. The drywall in this hallway is thin. See, Eric's voice came through clearly. It is accelerating. Dr. Evans will have to sign off on it now. We can file the emergency motion by Friday. Once I have the power of attorney active, I can authorize the transfer to cover the Northbridge shortage. I just feel bad. Eric, Sabrina said. She looked so lost. Don't feel bad. Eric snapped. Feel relieved. We are saving the lifestyle you love so much. I walked back to my guest house, my spine straight, the shaking gone from my hands. It was humiliating to let them look at me with such pity, to let them treat me like a child. But every time I played the part of the confused old woman, I was handing them a shovel to dig their own hole deeper. Later that night, my phone buzzed. It was Naomi. Vivian. Are you alone? She asked. Her voice was tight, urgent. Yes, I answered. What is it? I pulled the public records on those financial documents you found in the box, Naomi said. I had a friend at the regulatory board run a quiet check. Vivian, this isn't just about him taking control of your savings. The account he opened in your name, it is linked to a shell company that has been accepting deposits from 24 other seniors in the county. He isn't just stealing from you. He is running a massive Ponzi scheme, and he is setting you up to take the fall for it. The fluorescent lights of Naomi's office hummed with a low, irritating buzz that felt like a drill pressing into my temple. On the desk between us lay a stack of bank statements that looked innocent enough from a distance, but up close, they were a blueprint for a disaster. Vivian, look at the header, Naomi said, sliding a document toward me. Have you ever heard of the Verdant Horizon Fund? I shook my head. It sounds like a landscaping company. It is an investment vehicle, Naomi corrected, her finger tracing a line of text. And according to these incorporation papers filed in Delaware, you are not just an investor. You are the founding partner and the sole signatory for the liability clauses. I stared at my name in black and white. Vivian Elaine Mercer. Below it was a list of initial deposits. I recognized the names immediately. Martha Gable, Thomas Henderson, the couple who ran the bakery on 4th Street. These were people from my church, people from the senior center where I volunteered on Tuesdays. These are my friends, I whispered, my hand flying to my mouth. Martha gave me a fruitcake last Christmas. She told me Eric was helping her with her retirement portfolio because the market was so scary. She trusted him because he is my son. He didn't just use your name. Vivian? Naomi said, her voice hard and professional, though her eyes were kind. He used your reputation. You are the honest, hard-working widow who raised a financial genius. You are the bait. Naomi pulled out a flowchart she had drawn on a legal pad. It was a maze of arrows and boxes. The money comes in from these seniors to Verdant Horizon, she explained, tapping the top of the chart. It sits there for a month to look legitimate. Then, it gets transferred as consulting fees or management costs to 3 different shell companies in the Cayman Islands. From there, it flows right back into a subsidiary of Northbridge Equity that Eric controls. He is plugging the holes in his own company with the life savings of your neighbors. And when the money runs out, I asked, though I already felt the cold answer settling in my gut. When the market dips, or someone wants to cash out, the fund collapses, Naomi said. And who is left holding the bag? Not Eric. His name isn't on the founding documents. Yours is. So that is why he needs me to be incompetent? I realized, the horror finally taking a solid shape. If I am declared senile... Exactly. Naomi nodded. If you are declared mentally incompetent, the narrative becomes perfect. The poor, confused old woman made bad investments. She lost everyone's money because she didn't know what she was doing. Eric steps in as the grieving, responsible son. He settles the lawsuits for pennies on the dollar using the insurance money, claims he had no idea what Mom was doing, and walks away clean. I sat back in the leather chair. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching a movie about someone else. My son was not just a thief. He was a predator. He was willing to destroy my entire life, my past, my present, my good name, just to keep his own lifestyle afloat for a few more years. We need the feds, Naomi said quietly. This is wire fraud. It is elder abuse. It is money laundering. But we cannot just call them with a theory. We need the smoking gun. We need the original files. The box. I said. I waited until 2 nights later. Eric and Sabrina were hosting a dinner party for some local politicians, the house filled with music and laughter. I waited until the guests left and the lights in the main house went dark. At 3 in the morning, I pulled on my black raincoat and slipped out the back door. I moved like a ghost across the lawn. I knew exactly where to dig. The soil was loose from the last time. I worked in silence, using my hands to minimize the noise. When I pulled the tin box from the earth, it felt heavier than before, weighted down by the sins inside. I did not take the box this time. That would be too risky. Instead, I sat right there on the cold grass, hidden by the shadow of the maple tree, and opened my laptop. The screen's glow was dim, shielded by my coat. I plugged in the USB drive. My fingers flew across the keyboard, copying every folder to my hard drive. I opened one folder just to be sure. It was a spreadsheet, thousands of rows of numbers. And there, at the bottom of the file list, was a folder named VM Exit Plan. I clicked it open. It was a timeline. Phase 1, Isolate Target. Phase 2, Establish Pattern of Cognitive Decline. Phase 3, Guardianship Acquisition. Phase 4, Liquidation of Verdant Assets. He had planned my destruction like a business merger. I ejected the drive, put everything back in the box, and buried it again. As I patted the dirt down, I felt a cold resolve harden inside me. I was not Vivian the victim anymore. I was the witness. Back in my room, I stared at the folder on my screen. You wanted an exit plan. Eric. I whispered to the pixels. I am going to give you one, but you are not going to like where it leads. We decided to use the truth as a weapon, but we had to sharpen it first. In Naomi's office, we printed a specific thread of emails. These were not the financial spreadsheets. These were the scripts. In one particularly chilling exchange with his lawyer, Eric had written, "My wife is pliable. She enjoys the lifestyle too much to ask questions. I have coached her on the sadness she needs to display regarding mother's decline. She will perform when required." I slipped the envelope under the front door of the main house at 9 in the morning, right after Eric left for the city. Then I went back to my window and waited. I watched Sabrina pick it up. She stood in the foyer, her silhouette framed by the expensive frosted glass. I saw her head tilt as she read. Then I saw her hand go to her mouth. She stood there for a long time, frozen. She was reading the stage directions for her own life, written by the man she slept next to. She realized she was not a partner in this marriage. She was a prop. An hour later, I called the main house. "Sabrina?" "Dear," I said, keeping my voice wavering and thin. "I made some chamomile tea. Would you mind coming over? I am feeling a bit confused about some papers on my desk." She arrived 10 minutes later. Her eyes were red, but she was trying to hide it. She sat at my small kitchen table, looking at me with a mix of pity and suspicion. I fumbled with the teapot, deliberately clinking the china. "I found this statement," I said, pushing a piece of paper across the table. It was a bank transfer record I had printed from the USB. It showed a transfer of $50,000 from my savings to Verdant Horizon. I don't remember buying a Horizon. "Sabrina? Did I buy a painting?" Sabrina looked at the paper. Her face went pale. She recognized the fund name. Vivian. "Eric handles this," she said, her voice tight. "You should ask him." I stopped fumbling with the tea. I set the pot down on the trivet with a firm, deliberate thud. I sat down opposite her and folded my hands on the table. I let the vacancy drain from my eyes. I straightened my spine. I looked at her not as a confused old woman, but as the bookkeeper who had balanced ledgers for 40 years. If you think I do not know what Eric is doing with my account, Sabrina, then you are underestimating me, I said softly. Sabrina jumped. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. The transformation terrified her more than the shouting would have. Vivian, she whispered. You aren't. Senile, I finished for her. No. But Eric needs me to be. And judging by that email you read this morning, he needs you to be his obedient little actress. Sabrina started to cry. It was a quiet, broken sound. I didn't know it was illegal. She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I knew he was moving money around. But lately people have been calling the house phone. Older people. They ask for Eric. They say they haven't received their dividends. They sound so scared. Vivian. I was afraid to ask him. He is running a Ponzi scheme. Sabrina, I said, sliding the backup USB drive across the table until it touched her hand. And he is setting me up to take the fall. When the house of cards collapses, he is going to tell the world that his dementia-ridden mother made bad trades. He will walk away. I will go to a state facility or prison. And you will be the wife of a fraudster, left with nothing when the assets are seized. She looked at the USB drive like it was a poisonous spider. You have a choice, I told her. You can stay on his boat and drown with him. Or you can help me protect Liam and Grace. If you help me, I can promise you that the children will not be left destitute. But I need a witness who was in the room when he planned the guardianship. She didn't answer immediately. She took the USB drive and left. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had just handed my son the evidence he needed to destroy me faster. But the next morning, Naomi called. She is here. Vivian. Naomi said. Sabrina is here. She brought her phone. We have text messages where Eric coaches her on what to say to Dr. Evans. We have proof of intent to defraud. Naomi moved fast. By noon, she had contacted a federal agent named Collins from the Financial Crimes Division. He was interested. Very interested. But he had a condition. He wants to catch him in the act. Naomi explained to me over the phone later that afternoon. Agent Collins says the paperwork is strong, but a jury loves a physical smoking gun. He wants Eric to dig up that box. He wants to catch him with the physical evidence of the shell companies in his hands. So I have to wait, I asked, feeling a cold shiver run down my spine. You have to keep playing the part, Naomi said. Do not let him know you are lucid. If he suspects you know, he might destroy the evidence. Or worse. Worse. I repeated. I hung up the phone and looked out at the backyard. The sun was setting, casting long, jagged shadows across the lawn. The trap was set. But as I watched the shadows lengthen, I realized that a cornered animal is the most dangerous kind. Eric was desperate. If he sensed the walls closing in, if he realized his mother was the one building the walls, he wouldn't just try to institutionalize me. I checked the lock on my door twice. I was not just fighting for my money anymore. I was fighting for my survival. Next Tuesday, Eric said, buttering his toast with an aggressive precision that made the knife scrape loudly against the crust. I made an appointment with a neurologist, Dr. Aris. He is the best in the state. We need to get that memory of yours evaluated officially before it gets worse. He smiled at me. but his eyes were dead. He was checking his watch every 30 seconds. He was a man running out of time, and I was the loose end he needed to tie up. Tuesday, I repeated, letting my voice trail off into a weak whisper. Is that the day we go to the market? No, Mom. He sighed, the irritation leaking through his polite mask. Just be ready. By noon, the house was eerily quiet. Sabrina had taken Liam and Grace to her mother's house in the next town. She told Eric she wanted to spare the children from seeing me deteriorate. But as she hugged me goodbye near the driveway, her grip was fierce. She was trembling. She was not protecting them from my dementia. She was protecting them from the fallout of her husband's arrest. Night fell over Lakewood Ridge like a heavy black curtain. The silence was absolute, but the air felt charged with electricity. In my small guest house kitchen, Naomi sat in the dark. She was wearing headphones connected to a high-fidelity listening device she had placed near the window. Agent Collins is in position behind the hedges, Naomi whispered to me, her face illuminated only by the faint glow of the equipment. 3 others are covering the side gate. Just stick to the script. Vivian, do not let him get close to you. It was 11:45 when the back door of the main house opened. Eric marched out. He did not sneak this time. He moved with the frantic energy of a man who knows the walls are closing in. He wore his dark hoodie, and in one hand he gripped the shovel. In the other, he held his phone to his ear. Yeah, I am moving the assets tonight, I heard him say, his voice carrying clearly across the yard in the stillness. I can't risk the audit team finding the physical drive. No, don't worry about her. The old lady has no idea. She is watching game shows and forgetting what day of the week it is. She is totally gone. Naomi gave me a thumbs up in the dark. He just admitted it. I took a deep breath, opened my door, and flipped the switch for the porch light. The yellow beam cut across the yard, catching Eric right as he raised the shovel over the flower bed. I stepped onto the porch, clutching my robe tight around my throat. Eric, I called out, injecting a tremor into my voice. Is that you? What are you doing with the garden tools so late? He spun around, his eyes wide and manic. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, but a dangerous one. Go back inside. Mom, he shouted, not bothering to lower his voice. I took a step down onto the grass, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But the flowers, Eric, are you hurting the flowers? I planted those for your father. I think he is coming home soon. Dad is dead. Mum, Eric snapped, slamming the shovel into the earth. He has been dead for 20 years. You won't even remember this in the morning. You act like a child, so I have to treat you like one. Everyone knows you are gone. Mum, empty upstairs. He tapped his temple aggressively. Now go inside before you hurt yourself. He turned back to the hole and dug furiously. The metal hit the tin box with a dull clank. He reached down and pulled it up, the dirt falling from its sides. Got you, he muttered. Federal agents dropped the shovel, hands in the air. The voice boomed from the darkness like thunder. Suddenly, 4 high-powered tactical lights blinded us from the perimeter of the fence. The peaceful backyard turned into a stage of blinding white light. Men in windbreakers with FBI printed on the back swarmed over the white picket fence. Eric dropped the box as if it were red hot. He stumbled back, shielding his eyes. No, no. Eric screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. This is hers. That box belongs to her. She is the investor. She is senile. She doesn't know what she signed. I was just trying to stop her from hiding it. Naomi stepped out onto the porch beside me. She held up a file folder, her face calm and stern. Actually, Eric, she said, her voice cutting through his panic. We have the emails where you discuss framing her. We have the wire transfer records. And we have the original digital files you thought you were hiding. Agent Collins stepped forward, snapping handcuffs onto Eric's wrists. The cold metallic click echoed in the yard. Eric looked up. The arrogance was gone. The mask was gone. All that was left was a frightened, angry boy who had lost his game. He looked at me with pure hatred. You, he spat, his voice breaking. You set me up. You tricked me. What did you do to me? I stood on the porch, looking down at the son I had sacrificed everything for. I did not feel triumph. I felt a heavy, hollow sadness. I didn't do anything to you. Eric, I said, my voice steady and strong, the tremor completely gone. I just dug up what you buried. You did the rest yourself. The scandal hit the local news cycle like a hurricane making landfall. Overnight, the quiet, tree-lined streets of Lakewood Ridge were clogged with news vans. The Verdant Horizon case became the lead story on every channel. My face, usually reserved for family albums, was plastered across screens as the millionaire's mother betrayed. They turned me into a symbol, a poster child for the hidden epidemic of financial elder abuse. I hated the attention, but I knew I had to use it. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I sat in the front row, watching the prosecutor project a spreadsheet onto the large screen. It was the file I had copied from the USB drive, the one titled VM Exit Plan. The room went silent as the prosecutor read the column headers aloud. They listed my home, my pension, and my life insurance policy as liquidatable assets for emergency capital. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecutor said, pointing a laser at the screen. The defendant did not see a mother. He saw a bank account with a pulse. Sabrina took the stand on the third day. She looked thinner, her face pale without makeup. She avoided looking at Eric, who sat at the defense table scribbling furious notes on a yellow pad. When the defense attorney asked why she went along with the charade, she broke down. I was afraid. Sabrina stammered into the microphone, wiping her eyes with a tissue. He told me it was just paperwork. He said if we didn't do it, the firm would collapse and the children would lose their school, their home. Did Mr. Mercer ever physically harm the children? The defense attorney asked, trying to salvage Eric's character. No, Sabrina answered quickly, her voice firm for the first time. He never hit them, but he terrified me. He made me practice lines in the mirror like I was auditioning for a play. He wanted me to tell the neighbors his mother was losing her mind. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand with my head high. I wore my best navy suit, the one I used to wear to board meetings when I was a secretary. I did not look like a victim. I told the jury everything. I described the sound of the shovel hitting the dirt at midnight. I recounted the humiliation of pretending to forget my own name just to stay alive in my own home. Mrs. Mercer, Eric's lawyer asked, trying to rattle me. Is it possible you misunderstood your son's intentions? Perhaps he was trying to protect your assets from market volatility. I looked directly at the lawyer, then shifted my gaze to Eric. He was staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. My son was not protecting my assets, I said clearly into the microphone. He was harvesting them. He forged my signature on a power of attorney document because he knew, if I were legally competent, I would never let him steal the retirement money of the people in my church. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. The verdict was unanimous. Eric was found guilty on 12 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of forgery, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The judge, a stern woman with grey hair, looked over her glasses at Eric during the sentencing phase. She noted that while he had not raised a hand to me, the calculated cruelty of trying to erase a person's identity was a violence of its own. After the trial, the letters started coming. Hundreds of them. They came from widows in Florida and retired teachers in Ohio, all telling me similar stories of children or caretakers who had smiled at them while signing away their futures. It was heartbreaking. I used the restitution money Eric was forced to pay back, along with what was recovered from his frozen accounts, to establish the Mercer Trust for Elder Justice. We opened a small office downtown. We hired Naomi to run the legal aid division, helping seniors review documents before they signed them. I also set aside a trust for Liam and Grace, ensuring that their father's crimes would not steal their education. But even now, months later, as I sit in my new apartment in the city, a cold knot remains in my stomach. Justice was served. Yes, the legal battle is over. But sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I think about how proficient Eric was with that shovel. He dug that hole with muscle memory. He knew exactly how deep to go. Did I find everything? I whisper to the empty room, watching the shadows stretch across the floor. Or is there another hole, in another yard, that I never saw? 10 years is a long time to measure out in cups of tea and legal briefs. I am 78 years old now. My knees ache when it rains, and I move a little slower than I used to, but my mind is as sharp as a diamond cutter. I live in a small, sun-drenched apartment in the center of Lakewood Ridge, just 2 blocks from the Mercer Trust office where I still volunteer 3 days a week. Liam and Grace are in university now. They visit often. We talk about their classes, their friends, and sometimes, very carefully, we talk about their father. They carry a heavy burden. They remember a father who never raised a hand to them, but who was willing to sell their grandmother to save his career. It is a confusing kind of grief, mourning a man who is still alive but dead to the people who loved him. The letter from the parole board arrived on a Tuesday. It was heavy, printed on cheap government paper. Eric was applying for conditional release. He claimed he was a model prisoner. He claimed he had found God, or perhaps just a new angle. He included a handwritten letter addressed to me, begging for a chance to look me in the eye and apologize. Naomi sat at my kitchen table, her hair now fully grey. "He will be charming? Vivian?" Naomi warned, tapping the file. "He will cry. He will talk about redemption. If he convinces them he is a changed man, he could be out in 6 months. Your testimony is the only thing standing in the way." The night before the hearing, I drove to the old mansion. It belongs to a nice young couple now, but they know my story. They let me walk into the backyard alone. I stood by the maple tree where Eric had dug his hole that night. The grass had grown over it completely. Then I walked 20 paces to the east, to a spot near the fence line where the hydrangeas used to be. Eric never knew about the second hole. Years before his betrayal, right after I sold my house in Milford and moved into the guest suite, I had felt a strange, nagging instinct. It was the intuition of a woman who had survived poverty. I had taken my original will, the deed to my old house, and a handwritten letter, sealed them in a waterproof box, and buried them right there. It was my black box, my insurance against the feeling that things were too good to be true. Naomi had dug it up for me right after the arrest, and we had kept it sealed until now. The hearing room was cold. Eric looked gaunt. The prison uniform hung loosely on his frame, but his eyes were bright. He gave a moving speech. He spoke of his remorse. He spoke of his desire to teach financial literacy to inmates. He almost had me convinced. Then the board chair turned to me. "Mrs. Mercer, do you have a statement?" I stood up. I did not look at Eric. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a photocopy of the letter I had buried in the yard 15 years ago. "My son says he has changed," I said, my voice clear and steady. "He says he made a mistake. But I wrote this letter the day I moved into his house, years before he stole a single dime." I put on my reading glasses and read the faded ink aloud. "I am writing this because I love my son, but I know him. He sees people as resources. He sees love as a transaction. If a day comes when my son uses my love against me, if he tries to take my voice away, I want the court to know that I was never blind. I was just a mother, hoping to be wrong." I lowered the paper. The room was silent. Eric's face had gone pale, the mask of the repentant sinner slipping to reveal the shock of a man outmaneuvered by the one person he thought was weak. "I believe Eric is sorry he got caught," I told the board. "But if you let him out now, he will just use this story of redemption as his new product. He does not know how to live without someone to leverage." The gavel came down an hour later. Parole denied. I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 10 years, I felt the weight lift completely. The holes in the yard were filled. The secrets were all out in the open. I was not Vivian the victim, or even Vivian the survivor. I was just Vivian. And that was finally enough. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. So please drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey, please make sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this story reach even more people.